the sky falling? Or are we getting a glimpse through a crystal ball? Hi there, folks. My name is NovaWing24, and welcome back to the Grumpiest Podcast on YouTube. The Three Grumpy Simmers. And with me, your host, NovaWing24. And of course, I am joined once again by my fellow Grumpy Simmers. First of all, starting with the Don of the Helicopter Mafia, Sergio from helisimmer.com.
Always the same.
I mean, we have to pay homage to the Don every time we do this. We absolutely
Pay
do.
your respects to the Don.
Yeah, well, I am still waiting for a Jesus nut.
I do not want to wake up with a Jesus nut in my bed, just so you know that. I really do not. Anyway.
We are going to be staying at the same hotel. You never know what happens.
So, after having paid our respects to the Don of the Helicopter Mafia, we of course are also joined by our one and only Tomcat expert, leading his campaign for the Tomcat in every sim, Drew Belgiode.
I think I've accomplished that
Flight
for the
gear?
most part. For the most part. Flight gear, I haven't paid attention to.
Oh,
Sorry,
please,
Stuart, if you're watching, but I don't pay attention.
let's not poke Stuart, because Stuart has a pointy stick and is not afraid to use it. I have been threatened
yes.
many times with a pointy stick.
He has. Microsoft Flight Simulator, yes. Yes. What am I missing? War Thunder, even, yes. The only thing we're missing now is Aerofly FS4, but we already discussed that on a previous
We
video,
are
so
not
I'm not
getting
even
no.
gonna get into
We
that.
are not talking about
We're
Aerofly.
not getting into that.
No. We are here. We are here, folks. Before this gets derailed into another Aerofly conversation, we are here, folks, because of course, a couple of days ago, the latest trailer for the upcoming Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 has finally dropped. So this is the second trailer for the upcoming next evolution of Microsoft Flight Simulator franchise, and it has been I'm not going to say turbulent, because a couple of days as sort of people have been digesting it, but it's been the cause of I've seen some mixed reactions for it, mostly positive. But we wanted to gather around on rocking chairs and point at the young'uns and have our say and our thoughts about being grumpy old men in the simulation world and what we all think of that trailer. Because the question that I ask, and full disclosure here, I did a video a couple of hours after it released, which is available here on the channel if you would like to watch it, where I had a look at what did we actually learn from this new trailer that we didn't already know. And you don't get me wrong, absolutely, the trailer was brilliant, it was great, but did we really learn that much new? So I'm curious to sort of hear what my fellow Grumpies think of the new trailer and the direction that Microsoft and Asobo are taking with the latest upcoming iteration of the franchise.
It has tire smoke and mud.
Wait, hang on, did we actually see tire smoke? I didn't see tire smoke.
I
saw mud. That's
kind of like tire smoke. That's it's like splitting hairs now.
Okay.
What do you want? You want tire smoke? You want bush dust?
There's
no such thing as bush dust. What the hell is bush dust?
I don't want to know.
Do I need to change the rating on this video? Like, what?
You might. You very much might.
So we've got we obviously we got the effects engine has been given a huge revamp, and yes, absolutely, you're right there. We saw that the dirt and the mud being kicked up off the Tundra tires, which is very, very impressive to see. What other sort of things so that's obviously what stuck out to you and what sort of was highlighted to you. What else jumped out at you there, Belgiode?
Honestly, the one thing that I saw that stuck out to me, well, three things.
Mm-hmm.
First thing, the one that I was going to mention initially, auto gyros. Think about that for a second. Auto gyros. Those weird, quirky little birds that have a rotor and have a propeller in the back. and heaven help you if you're not going fast enough with the propeller, and all of a sudden the rotor's like, hey, you know what? I don't want to do nothing. How are they going to model that? Is it going to work? Is it going to be similar to, how we've experienced it in X-Plane? Because X-Plane actually has autogyros in there. But for something like that to come to Microsoft Flight Simulator in an official capacity, that means they would have had to have devoted some time towards the physics and the flight model and so on and so forth. And then, of course, the caveat with that is if they're introducing that as one of the quote-unquote final pieces to the puzzle, that's going to spill over to all the other previous flight models that they've worked on. So that was thing number one. Thing number two, which you actually missed, Tristan, on your video, which I pointed out in the comment. There's like a fraction of a second where you can see the autogyros going over and down a mountain. The trees are in autumn colors.
Yeah, I saw your comment about that, and you're right. I read that, and I went back and I watched the video again, and I went, you're absolutely right, because at the moment it's kind of like X-Plane in a way, where it's basically it's either summer or it's
either
snowing.
Summer or it's winter.
Yeah,
and it's like that now. Microsoft Flight Simulator's like that now. If you go to like Alaska and places like that, all the videos that I've done in northern climes, you'll see if the weather says it's snowing, that's it. That's all you got is snow. Otherwise, it looks like it's frickin' June.
Right.
But if they're adding in seasons, and that's like one of their subtle ways of telling us, of course, we really don't know for sure until, we actually get more information on the subject. But that immediately stuck out to me because I used to use a mod called, what was it? Bijan, Bijan, or something like that added seasons depending on, which hemisphere you were in. And you had to install all the various trees and so on and so forth. I think I got it from Sim Market or someplace like that.
I remember
that. But to not need something like that for 2024, to just have it know, okay, the date is June. So we should be in summer. The date is October, and we're in Massachusetts. It should look like, somebody just lit off a cherry bomb or something, like an incendiary. There's this fiery flame on leaves and everything. That kind of thing, if they're incorporating that for 2024, I'm very excited about that because as most of you out there know, I live in Pennsylvania. We see the seasons. That was one of the major reasons why I moved up here, aside from get away from Florida hurricane.
Don't you see the seasons in one day, though?
Well, I didn't realize that when I moved here. I found that out after I moved here. Pittsburgh, if you love the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It'll change.
And to be fair, that's actually a really good point and something that I do remember, like back when the Sim first launched, it was something that was commented on because there was the add-on that you've talked about. Rex did one as well, if I remember correctly. Rex did like a seasonal add-on as well. And that was something that the community pointed out that said, hey, your ancestor in i.e. Flight Simulator X, it could do seasons. Why can't you?
Yeah, it's been missing. It's been noticeably missing. I used to love that part about FSX.
Yep.
And Microsoft knows that. They have said in the past that they were thinking about how to add seasons to the sim, but they had, as you guys know, you were there in Seattle back in 2019, and you've been obviously following all the interviews and all the articles that are written about Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you have asked the team themselves. They have been working. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 was the base of what they want to do, right?
The grand 10-year plan that he talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, which is not. Let's be clear for those that are hearing this. It's not 10 years. That's just a matter of speech. Their plan is to continue to evolve the sim in the future. So that's something that Microsoft always knew they had to add into the sim. There are some things that they added immediately, VR, for example, right? When they started to realize, okay, there's a chunk of the market that we are losing, and we need to get this. And I have to say, I was
I wonder how that could have happened.
By the way, folks, in case you didn't know, you have to thank these two
It's
for getting VR in the sim. Like literally, it wasn't even on their radar until these two bent ears at Microsoft and Asobo.
Drew punched them in the stomach. I just pulled their arms. So it was basically that. It was pretty much Drew that brought it to their attention. But
no, I can't take the credit for that. It was the community that did that. Yes, I may have spearheaded it and brought it directly to the developer's attention. But when I said, hey, listen, Microsoft wants to know how many of you want VR, and all of you just like responded, that's all on you guys.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a community. Yeah, most of the things are community efforts, right? So I think that just like many other things that we don't see in the sim, Microsoft has plans for a lot of different things for sure. They need to evolve the product, so that's one of the ways. But yeah, Drew, sorry.
What the third thing I was? Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. What the third thing I was going to say was it Sky Crane? Because I'm not going to lie, I really like the Sky Crane.
I mean, all the Australian viewers, or 100%, all the Australian virtual aviators, Australian viewers are absolutely going to love the fact that the Sky Crane, because we'd seen the Sky Crane in the first trailer, but only in the terms of the heavy lift variant. But this time round in the trailer, we saw it in the firefighting role, and for Australians, the Sky Crane as a firefighting helicopter is absolutely iconic. Elvis was Elvis was the helicopter's the name that it got when it arrived in Australia. And
I remember when we saw that sucker for real, though.
Yep. And
we were in Connecticut at Flight Sim Con before it became Flight Sim Expo.
Yep. And that's the thing is that for Australian audiences, like seeing that in this firefighting role is going to be a huge draw card because that aircraft is absolutely iconic in Australia. Fighting fires, the bushfires in Australia every year, every season. So seeing that, I immediately, the Australian to me basically went, I even if I hadn't already been sort of corrupted by the helicopter mafia, that is one helicopter I will absolutely learn how to fly because that is one that is truly iconic for any Australian aviator. So seeing the Sky Crane was a pretty in that extra role that we saw was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What other helicopters are you seeing, Sergio, that you're like most interested in seeing how they're going to pull it off?
Because we saw an existing helicopter, and we saw a couple of we saw one helicopter that we saw in the first trailer. That was the Squirrel. I forget what the actual Airbus code is for it these days. I think it's the
H125.
The 125. Didn't it used to be an AS3 something?
AS350.
It used to be
it's the
AS350.
same helicopter. Yeah. When the company was Aerospatiale, the French Aerospatiale, it was the AS350. There's a 355, which is 2 engines. They eventually abandoned, and now it's the H125. So we had seen the H125. I am pretty sure we saw the Sky Crane on a previous video as well.
Yes, but
on the first video, the R66 is a new one.
Yes,
that's the new one, and just like Drew, I saw the auto gyros and I was like, okay, cool. This was pretty much the next step. Sebastian talked about it a couple of times, perhaps in the past. People asked about auto gyros, and he said, eventually it would come. It would just make sense because it was the next progression of the flight model. I just hope they also improved the helicopter flight model in general, not just added the auto gyros. And there were a couple of other things that really got my attention. Well, missions, of course, but you already knew that from the first trailer. The different kinds of missions. I sent Jorg a list of a lot of different missions helicopters perform. Those that we see on the trailer are there, of course. But there are a couple of things that really got me interested. One is the fact that we have a lot of human characters on the trailer, throughout the trailer, including
And
passengers. Right?
and well modeled ones too.
And very well modeled. And the other thing
Without headphones. No, seriously, that was a thing that came up. Was the fact that the human characters, whenever you see them around, they always have their headphones on. And now we're seeing them without.
They're using earbuds now. It's more.
Got that Apple iPod.
Yeah. The other thing that I liked on the trailer was the fact that it seems like we now have a first-person character.
Yes.
Avatar mode.
Yeah.
How many times have I mentioned that? I told y'all when we were in Seattle, I
Yes.
saw that they had that avatar mode in there, and then
Mysteriously, it vanished.
before we actually got a chance to play the alpha.
Yeah. Yeah. So that I think that was pretty cool. Of course, there are a lot of different things in the trailer that are interesting, but perhaps they're more interesting for the non-helicopter crowd. For some reason, I pretty much looked at the helicopters and froze there. Weird, right?
I think that you're both absolutely right, because that is something that I definitely agree with in terms of the autogyros, because what that clearly indicates is a massive rethinking and massive updates of the overall flight model capabilities of the engine, and the importance of autogyros in that role, because as you pointed out, Drew, it has both aircraft and helicopter characteristics.
One cannot exist without the other.
So
if you want to fly, you cannot exist without the other.
Yeah, you can fudge helicopter flight physics kind of, as we used to do basically in FSX, but basically using super stall. But in terms of this engine and the way they're modeling it and the way we're setting it up, it's a lot harder to do it. And I think that the work that they've done, and that's why I think also more related to the current edition of the sim, why the addition of gliders was actually incredibly important, because that for me also showed a huge step up in terms of how they're modeling flight dynamics, how they're modeling the environment as well, because gliders cannot exist without a well-modeled flight model and a well-modeled environment model, because you can't brute force them with putting some numbers in an engine line of the configuration file, because it ain't got one. Like it's got nothing. So I think that was a for me, when I saw gliders, I'm not a huge glider fan, but at the same time I appreciate why they're in there and the importance of them being in there for what it gives for everything else. And I think you're absolutely right, and it's a degree that I hadn't necessarily thought as much on until you both mentioned it, is that autogyros do that for rotary wing and fixed wing as well.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that we need to remember that's so beautiful about this entire flight sim community. All the different niches, portions of the community, all of that goes in and affects the overall flight sim. When you start catering to stuff like the glider community, stuff like the hot air ballooning community, which was actually the third thing that I wanted to mention, the hot air balloons. How in the hell are they going to model that?
I don't know. They can ask Captain Sim.
Yeah.
We won't go there. But I mean, when you start taking into consideration all these various parts of the community and start incorporating a lot of, their needs as far as physics and everything else, that's what propels your entire sim forward. Instead of just being known as, the sim that's got the great, airliner physics, just to throw something out there, all of a sudden you've literally got something for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite interesting what you mentioned, Tristan, regarding gliders, because I always smile when someone talks about gliders, because gliders are pretty much the evidence that goes against the crowd that is always saying that Microsoft Flight Simulator is a simulator on rails.
Yes,
because you have the atmosphere is being is being simulated, and not just gliders. If you fly a fixed-wing aircraft or a helicopter on the ridges where the air moves upwards, you'll get that air. You'll feel that air moving upwards. And
Oh,
gliders just show you that. I find it kind of weird, and I actually laugh or smile when I see these comments. Oh, Microsoft Flight, people got used to bashing Microsoft Flight Simulator so hard, and people have that tribal mentality that I very often talk about. It's we versus them. It's something that
Yes.
People can stuck this idea that they can enjoy both things. They don't need to choose one or the other, right? But people do that. If I use explain, I am anti Microsoft Flight Simulator and vice versa. Just stupid.
One sim
right?
to rule them all. Yeah.
It's just stupid.
But that's
that's
thing,
quite important
too. I think probably the most brilliant move that they did, and this is going back to 2019 in Seattle, was letting us experience the sim and then actually putting us on real life Cessnas to go fly around the area. So that way we've got that instant validation. Okay, you know what? They absolutely nailed what thermals are supposed to do.
Absolutely, and they and even in that early stage, like the avionics were for somebody like me who I'm not a glass cockpit flyer. I am a 6-pack gauge flyer, but the limited knowledge that I gained of using a Garmin G1000 in sim, I then transferred to doing in the 172 that we went flying in, and I went.
It paid off. It all came together.
It all came together, and I'm like, and the one thing that really got me was, as you pointed out absolutely correctly, was the fact that the fact that you got the thermals, the fact that you got that jump, and just sort of jumping around when you're flying, because rightly or wrongly, and this is not saying anything bad here, but the fact is that the vast majority of people who fly flight sims, the closest they get to flying in real life is sitting down the back of an airliner when they're going on holiday. And this isn't saying it's a bad thing or anything. It's just simply it's a fact. I have spent far more hours down the back of an airliner going from point A to point B via sea than I have up in the good seats. So I can absolutely attest to that. So the point is that that's our general experience, which, let's be honest, it's kind of smooth back there. Flying on a smaller, lighter aircraft, as you both know, and as we learned in Seattle, is that it absolutely is. It's different. I am very fortunate that I've got several hours in a variety of different types in the good seats, and I can absolutely say, is it perfect? Absolutely not. I have worked with multi-million-dollar level D sims, and I can tell you without a doubt that the one thing that every single instructor says to me when we talk about it is pretty good for a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Literally.
And let's face it.
Every instructor I've spoken to
when it
has
really
said that.
comes down to it, you
Except
cannot
it's not a game.
compete against Mother Nature. She is one unpredictable bitch.
Yes. Yep. So you're both raising really good points here, and I think that's I think those sort of additions of the gyrocopters, because again, people often sort of say why, and this is something I remember hearing a lot about with the release of MSFS. By the way, also side note, squirrel, I love how the fact that they've just given up calling it Microsoft Flight Simulator and they've just rolled with the fact that the community called it 2020, and they've just accepted it and gone, it's now 2024. I just love that. Anyway, so it's sort of great to sort of see those options and go through those things. Something that I think is also really interesting beyond what you point is talking about the first person mode, because I really want to pick up on that. As you said, we saw that was there. Now, if I remember correctly, we saw it in the menu, but we couldn't access it.
Or you couldn't activate it.
Yeah, we couldn't.
Right.
It was there, but you couldn't access it. And then when we actually got the alpha build, it was completely gone. So it's like,
But
okay.
that was one of the things that really stuck out to me, because up until that point in time, I had been using it in D.
Yep.
And of course, I was still doing like the Arma 3 and all of that. So, I was kind of used to the whole first person running around, hopping into a vehicle and flying off. So when I saw that in Microsoft Flight Simulator, I had actually called one of the devs over to ask her about it, and I said that that was a good idea, and I actually thought they were going to take that to heart.
Well, and
5 years later,
I would dare to say that I think that they did take it to heart, but they wanted to make sure they did it right, because I think
Yeah.
the other side of this as well, in terms of the release date, is it's being released for November the 19th. Okay, cool. Let's rewind. Let's go back to 2020 for a second here. Now, Microsoft Flight Simulator was released in August. What was the one thing that we all agreed on when it was released, especially those of us who were in the beta test? It's good,
it's not
but
ready
it's not
yet.
ready. It absolutely couldn't. So my extrapolation, my guess is that the original release was actually planned for November 2020. But given insert global events here, they decided to bring it out early. Now, I think that they probably sort of went, okay, what do they have to, what can they cut out, and then pushed on to the next update of the sim. And I think that they went, you know what, let's spend the time and get it right. So I think that things like the seasons, the moving flora that we saw, because again, I know that we talked about that in Seattle. I've talked about that with the Sobo developers at Flight Sim Expo last year, and it was a very cagey answer that I got last year, and I was kind of like,
which means that they were already planning it. You've got to understand the Asobo speak, and I know you've been around them enough now to figure it out. Yeah, when they start giving you the KG answers, it's
like come on, hand it up. But something else that I want to sort of cover off, that I was starting to talk about before as well, is that one of the reasons that I was so excited to see, the gliders, seeing the gyrocopter coming out in 2024, and I think something that a lot of maybe members of the audience, members of our community don't necessarily understand, because one of the comments that you always hear is like, why do you focus on, why were you focusing so much on GA aircraft? Why were you focusing so much on, these small aircraft that, quite frankly, most people never fly? Let's, we've seen it, most people, they jump in, particularly casual users, more than, some users, they jump in on the 747, they find their house and they crash into it. And then they're kind of like, now what? So why was there such
I can honestly say, in all the decades that I've played the various iterations of Flight Sim, I have never jumped into a 747, found my house, crashed.
You missed out on watching Twitch for the first 2 weeks after release. You absolutely missed out on watching that. That was literally stock standard.
Drew, that means you are not a real simmer.
I guess not.
I'm sorry.
I guess not.
I'm sorry, man.
So
I'll just go back to freaking Skyrim or Dragon Age or something.
But the question was always, a lot of the community, a lot of the established flight sim community were like, why are you focusing on this? Why aren't you giving us 10 million airliners? Why aren't you producing combat aircraft? Why aren't you producing insert other aeroplane here? And I think that ties back into what we're talking about in terms of the underlying sim, is how you develop
it. The building blocks.
Exactly.
It's the building blocks. It's just the thing about it, one of the things that excites me about auto gyros, just like it excited me about gliders, and I'm not a fixed wing guy, as you know, but I understood what was coming with gliders. There was a lot more coming than just the actual glider aircraft. It was the physics. The fact that we have, and there's something that people perhaps missed or don't understand, but Sebastian Vlog talked about it. When he started working on the improvement of rotors, all that transfers to propellers, right? So all the physics that he was working on for rotors, he transferred that for propellers. Because in case a lot of you that are watching don't know, rotors are far more complex than propellers. They are far more complex.
They're not just propellers turn 90 degrees?
No, they're not. And contrary to what some people think, they are not VTOL fans either. like some authors of some other sims seem to believe. Anyway, so these things, come on, Tristan, don't die on me here. So these things tend Jesus, these
No,
things
continue.
tend to be interchangeable. What they work when they work on something on a specific type of aircraft, it ends up favoring all the other types of aircraft. Now, in case of the autogyro, what excites me is the fact that an autogyro is pretty much an aircraft that is flying in perpetual auto rotation, right? The rotor doesn't actually.
There it is. I was waiting for that. Yep.
There's no engine making the rotor move. What makes the rotor move is the air going through the blades. So the fact that they have autogyros, which is an aircraft that depends on auto rotation to fly, means that auto rotation will be vastly improved for helicopters. Now, for those
and that's one of the big things people have been complaining about all this time.
Exactly. Now,
I thought it was VRS they were all complaining about.
No, that's what they have to be considered realistic.
That's the flight dynamics validator. Now, why is it important for those that don't fly helicopters? That's how a helicopter glides. Yes, a helicopter can glide. That is how a helicopter glides. If the engine,
saves your life,
goes boom, you actually start auto-rotating and you land. And in many cases, it's actually safer to auto-rotate than to glide with an aircraft because you manage to stop on a much shorter distance. So this eventually helps helicopters. It doesn't, I wouldn't say it probably doesn't help fixed-wing aircraft that much, but it still contributes to the whole aircraft ecosystem, right? And everything that is being done, or most of what is being done on the type of helicopter of aircraft that you don't fly for some reason, may eventually end up helping the aircraft that you do fly. So people need to understand that it's not binary. It's not ones and zeros. It's not white. It's not white and black.
It's absolutely shades of grey, and and I think you put it really, really well by saying building blocks, because at the end of the day, that's what this is. It is a. And I think Edson from Parallel 42 put it really, 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 really well. Is that it is more than just a flight simulator. It is a world simulator. And you've got so many options available to you. And we think about aircraft types. If your pilot, for all of those who prefer to fly the 787, good for you. Where did a real world 787 pilot start? They started in a single engine piston somewhere back many years ago. They started on a 152 and then they moved on to a Tomahawk, or they moved on to a Baron as they went up their ratings all the way up to ATP. So I think that those things are really important, not just from a perspective of, because you're absolutely right, of building the quality of the simulator, because each of those little steps, if you nail those small parts right, and you improve those small parts, then they contribute to the great whole, so that your aircraft at the top of the performance envelope kind of tree, whatever you want to call it, they will benefit from you having just taken the time to get the stuff at the lower end right. But in the same breath, for those who are using the sim as a simulation game, then you can simulate the real world experience. And one of the taglines which I noticed, which was far more prevalent in both of these two trailers for MSFS 2024 as opposed to 2020, was I think it was the tagline, realize your dream to fly. Or career to fly, or something like that. It was very focused around use this for flying, to recreate the experience of flying. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of the old FSX line, it's as real as it gets. But that was noticeably absent from the 2020 advertising. Like any sort of tagline like that was noticeably absent. They very much brought it in here. And I think that is in a big part because of, as you said, Sergio, it's the building blocks that they have established along the way to improve the quality of the sim. So while somebody may say, I don't fly gliders, I don't care for these gliders, I don't want them in here, or I don't want auto gyros, what's this auto rotate nonsense? That's just for weird things that don't fly correctly. sorry, but actually, by getting those things right, they make your experience flying your A330 with the GE engines that they advertised in the latest trailer, that makes that experience far better because they took the time to get the weather right, to get the weather modeling improved, to get the aerodynamics right, to improve the quality of all regimes of flight, no matter what they are, because you will experience those different regimes of flight in your big tube liner or in your fast jet or in your thing that goes Bert that doesn't have a Bert on it. So
You know what that reminds me of? You remember the thing with Sully, the Miracle on the Hudson?
yes.
That's something that I see a lot of flight simmers trying to replicate. Just
Please,
from the standpoint of being like a
anybody who does
Facebook
that,
admin.
anybody who does that, please do not try and post it to a Facebook group. Just don't. Like, I have no problem with you doing it. It's a great challenge. Don't post it to a Facebook group.
If they get the glider physics and so on and everything that goes into that, if they get, all of that stuff that, I'd rather not fly, that's the stuff that's going to make that kind of replication even more realistic.
Yeah.
Everything is connected. We're not like, little independent niches that are just like, completely oblivious from every other facet of flight sim.
Yep.
And I think that is probably the one thing that I want to impress upon people. We're literally all connected.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you might not fly a helicopter.
Yep.
But you're still kind of benefiting from it.
So basically what we're trying to say is that if you're not a good enough human being to be happy about what others do and enjoy the sim the way you do, your selfish being will be very happy because there's something that they are doing for the other people that will benefit you, and that will make you very happy.
You should become a psychologist. You should become a psychologist. Great advice. So,
or you could be a Sith because only Sith deal in absolutes.
So that's sort of like some of the key takeaways from you both out of that. For me, much the same as yourselves. Seeing the auto gyros, seeing the interactivity of the wind, and the environment on the terrain. That was something that for me is a big deal. The water. So for the last part of this, I'm gonna throw a bit of open to you for some speculation. Do we think that so a combination of speculation and then also sort of rounding it out with another sort of topic that'll feed into that? Do we think we know who's developed what? Like, because Parallel 42 came out with this amazing add-on for MSFS just a few months ago.
The Auroras thing? Yeah.
That had the Auroras, had the dust, had the dirt.
Come clean. If you're watching this, you better come clean. Seriously, better come clean. I know it was you. You can't hide it. I will find Vegas.
Remember,
I probably
Edson,
owe you a drink or something.
We're all going to be at Flight Sim Expo. Just remember that. So yeah, like, is this a case of is this all internal? What's come from a third party? Like, we know that Microsoft and Asobo work with third party, first party devs on a very regular basis. Do we see that? Is this Parallel 42's sim experience pack in the sim? I mean,
does there need to be a distinction? And I say that because, again, going back to that fateful few days in Seattle that we had back in 2019, that was one of the things we asked them, and they promised us, which, to their credit, they've been able to hold true to that promise, that they were going to involve the community in the development of the sim. So does it even matter whose line is it anyway if it's all going to be incorporated into the core sim?
Well, in a way, I think it does, just for the
credit's sake?
Not so much for credit's sake, but for the developers to understand that they do have a voice and what they do can actually be part of the sim as something that is a base of the product. that that does it matter that when I'm using was Parallel 42 or Microsoft or Zobo or whoever did it? Well, I'll be happy for Edson. I'll tell you that. I'll be happy and proud of Edson's work. Parallel 42 has always come up with some really cool and interesting add-ons for Microsoft Flight Simulator. But other than that, I don't care. But I think it's important for these third-party developers to understand that if they work hard, they make good products, they make something that is interesting for the product and for the community, they have a shot at having their products be included in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I understand your perspective, Drew. You're right.
Although Edson is a very, very, very evil man because he put ground vehicles in my flight sim, and now everybody is driving around when they should be flying an Airbus.
To be fair, he wasn't the first.
Yeah, but when that happened, all my helicopters stopped working.
So, but I think you actually make an incredibly important point, Sergio,
Edson.
that it actually doesn't matter who did it, but but it's good to know, and it's good, I think, from the morale and to encourage developers to strive for better. Captain Sim, I am absolutely looking at you, to strive for better, to do better, because that will mean that, as you said, you have the opportunity potentially of becoming a first-party dev. I mean, look at the lineup that we have. I mean, we have Aeroplane Heaven. I mean, Carinado, they were in there from the get-go.
They've been there from the get-go, yeah.
So,
Aerosoft and
Aeroplane
Orbix.
Heaven, Aerosoft, and for the life of me, I've forgotten his name, but he was the gentleman who's done a lot of the Junkers aircraft. I remember flying those aircraft in X-Plane and in Prepared, he did the Ju-52 and the DOX and the F-13.
Why am I drawing a blank on that?
For the life of me, I can't remember his name. So apologies if you're watching. I think that's incredibly important, as you said, Sergio, to keep the morale up and to give people the encouragement to strive for better. Because and of course, and the A10, for those who may not know, the A10 is actually being produced by DC Designs.
We ain't gonna talk about that. We ain't gonna talk about that. We ain't gonna talk about that.
Okay, all right, we're gonna let that one go.
I love you, but we all know why we ain't gonna talk about that. Okay, moving on.
So, seeing that we have some great first party third party devs who become first party devs, Aerosoft. I think it was kind of nice to finally have the confirmation as well kind of confirmation that we've, the Aerosofts mysteriously going quiet and pulling their Twin Otter and their A330. Surprise! They're in the trailer. So, it's kind of interesting. But that actually leads me into the last thing that I want to talk about to actually round out. And this is something that has already happened in MSFS. Is also, especially for those of us who own Aerosoft's Twin Otter, is going to happen again for this sim as well, is what does it mean and how do we feel when you buy a third-party aircraft, scenery, whatever, and then it gets rolled into the core sim?
That's going to be a new and interesting dilemma that I'm not sure we've actually faced before.
Yes, we have. Sydney Cityscape, Melbourne Cityscape from Orbix.
Wait, really?
Yep.
That was added to the World update, right?
Australia update. Yep. Not all of it, and Orbix then countered by then expanding what those who own their package, they increase their package and what you got with it. But
wait, I think I still have the Orbix installed. Did they update that? Because I've just been, whenever I open up the Orbix Central, I just let it do its thing if it needs to download something. So did they actually update it to the standard of the sim update?
So one, they my understanding is from when it happened is that Microsoft basically said, hey, we want to take a lot, not all, but a lot of what was in their Sydney cityscape, and we want to put it in the sim, i.e. the Sydney Harbour Bridge. That was the main one. There were several other Sydney POIs that went in there as well. And so that got ported into the Australia update. So what Orbix basically turned around and said, it was like, okay, to deal with the fact that, hey, a bunch of the reasons that the main reason why people bought that cityscape was because the Sydney Harbour Bridge, they then added in a bunch of extra POIs, updated some more photoreal imagery and a bunch of other stuff updated. But, you know, the core reason why I will guarantee you 95% of people bought that Sydney cityscape was to get the bridge. I'll guarantee that's why they bought it. They then a lot of people were very angry. They were like, well, now it's included in the sim for free. So who's in the right?
Why do you need the Orbix?
And, you know, given the fact that you had the Orbix pack for a year, 2 years prior to the Australia
update. Yeah, I got
it
when it first came out.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 years between when the Orbix Sydney Cityscape came out and when the Australia update came out for the core sim. You still had 2 years worth of it. So... And then again, with the Aerosoft conversation with the Twin Otter, is that they released it, they supported it for all of about 3 months, and then suddenly, I think it was 3 or 6 months, and then suddenly it was gone from virtual shelves, and there has been 0 updates to it ever since. It still flies like shit.
The question comes up then, which I think is what you're leading to, is how are Microsoft and Sober going to prevent that sort of thing from happening in the future and thereby disgrunting customers who've paid for products that are going to be included later?
And is it their responsibility?
They won't have to pay for.
And is it their responsibility?
As
I say, I don't think there is a right answer to this. Like, I straight up, I don't think there's a right answer to this. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that, because as I said, we've already seen it in a small scale with MSFS, but 2024, I think at least from the Twin Otter perspective, we're definitely going to see it from an aircraft for the first time. This will be the first time we're seeing it from an aircraft. We've seen it with scenery before, you know, and I still sort of, you know, I still remember one of the first scenery pieces for MSFS that I actually reviewed was for I can't even remember it now, but it was I want to say it was Denver. I think it was Denver International.
Flight Beam, I think it was.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, and it was
one of the other ones.
It was Denver International, and I was comparing it to the fact that, you know, because I had the Premium Deluxe version, the fact that I got it with a sim, and I was kind of like, the Premium Deluxe one's better. Like, okay, it didn't have all the signage, but overall, it was a better representation of the airport. So then, what's the thing? So, you know, to a lesser degree, we've seen that several times. There's been, you know, scenery released, which has either been, you know, they've had a world update come out, which is then added in that airport. What's the thoughts of my two fellow Grumpy Simmers?
No, I think you're onto something there, and to me, I'm just thinking about it from the standpoint of someone who gets on YouTube, hops into a plane, hops into a new scenery, depending on, you know, if there's one available at the time of recording, and just flying around the area and giving my honest opinions on the thing. It's always been the same thing. Caveat emptor, which is Latin for buyer beware.
Yep.
Basically. We have all come over the years to rely on, like, you know, YouTube personalities or whatnot to actually look at this stuff for us to see if it's stuff that we want to buy. And I think that is probably going to become even more important as we go forward. Whenever we have, you know, world updates and so on and so forth, you're going to want to look at the guys that actually get into the nitty gritty and figure out whether or not you actually want to get world update. I'm just going to throw numbers out, 24, or if you want to get, you know, scenery for XYZ city, scenery for XYZ airport, because that's actually going to tell you if that's something that you actually care about whether or not you're going to want to invest. And granted, investment might mean no money at all, or it might mean $10 on the market. But still, I think what they're doing with incorporating a lot of this stuff is kind of sort of opening the floodgates for those of us who do the reviews and so on and so forth to really put our best foot forward, give the honest opinion, get into the nitty and the gritty, and inform the populace, the general public, what it is that we're seeing here, the good and the bad. And especially you, Tristan, with the Nova Wrap every week. I will tell everybody that is watching this, I rely on that to tell me what next I am going to. Sergio?
Yeah, that's a hard question, man. I was silently getting my cogs to work together because I think you're right, Tristan. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no exact answer. My opinion, those companies have a contract with Microsoft, right? They are making. Let's forget they have sold. Let's first forget they have sold the product. Let's just focus on one on one thing, which is they have a contract with Microsoft. They are being paid for their product to be included in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So there's revenue coming from there. As a customer, I would not be pleased, but at the same time, I am supporting a company that I like, that I want to continue supporting. I think from an ethical perspective, companies that do this should, and this is just my opinion, if I was in the shoes of these companies, if Microsoft had paid me to get my product inside Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I already had sold that product to customers, I would probably give them store credits and allow them to purchase any other product that I had so that they could, get their money back. I think that would be the ethical thing to do, right?
Interesting point. Hadn't thought of that. Yep. Okay.
Because
if you already paid the rent, how are you gonna pay them back the money?
Well, but it's
you're not paying the money back. You are giving them
you're giving them. You're basically saying.
So your next purchase is free.
Yeah. So it's like saying, hey, thanks for supporting me as a developer. Hey, this product ended up being caught the eye because YouTubers and the public loved it so much. It caught the eye of Asobo and Microsoft. They decided to license it to give to everybody. But because it's sort of almost like I don't want to say a pre-order bonus because that's a whole nother kettle of fish we don't want to get into. But basically it says, hey, it's an acknowledgement to say, hey, thanks for supporting us because this is going now a different path, and because from my understanding, I'm may be wrong with this because funny enough, Microsoft I'm still waiting to get on the store. That they basically, my understanding is that the when that happens, they get the IP. So, in the example of, again, my assumption based from pieces I've put together from talking to various developers over the years is that let's, assume that Aerosoft Twin Otter is the Aerosoft Twin Otter. Basically, Microsoft's come in and said, we want to put that in 2024, so we're buying it from you. So hence why it's no longer for sale is because Microsoft has said, we're buying it from you and we're taking in the work, which means that Aerosoft then can't sell it to anybody else. But which then leads us to the situation of people who have bought it being left scratching, going, this thing basically doesn't fly anymore. It hasn't been fixed because most likely the core model files probably aren't even with Aerosoft anymore. Or if they are, they've been modified to suit the upcoming sim, so they can't provide support for the current one. So that's a really interesting perspective that I hadn't sort of thought of, Sergio, that instead of going down the path of getting refunds, which, as you pointed out, Drew, sort of, caveat emptor, you buy a digital product, as we talked about on a few episodes ago, you basically good for you. Yeah, but giving them store credit to basically saying, hey, you supported us. Things have changed. Here's us honoring and sort of paying it forward to the community. So that's a really interesting idea, and it's something that I hadn't thought of, and I think it's quite good. But as I said, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. I think that Flight Simulator is fairly unique in this. I mean, I don't really know of this happening in maybe.
It's a gray,
It's
area.
extremely rare if it does happen, but this is exactly why I love playing devil's advocate sort of thing, because trust the flight sim community to come up with the weirdest scenario.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, because part of my position is that at the end of the day, it's a bit like when people are complaining, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to buy the sim again 4 years after I bought it. Okay, cool. And if you remember, 15 years ago,
2000.
They don't remember. Most of these guys don't remember.
Most of these guys are they're kids.
A century of flight.
Yeah.
FSX.
Look, for
2
most
years
of the
apart,
people,
all four of those.
For most of the people, I think most of the guys that complain about it probably never even used the sim before.
Probably FSX was their first sim, and they had, what was it, 10?
12,
15
14 years, something
years
like
of
that.
it?
I don't know.
A lot of years.
Yeah.
It was a while.
A lot of.
It was a while.
So that, if they used X-Plane, they have no excuse. X-Plane releases a new version every few years.
Yeah,
right.
So it's really
or even DCS.
Industry.
DCS is currently being updated.
It's industry standard. Like that you are going to rebuy the base sim at periodically. Insert period here. And at the end of the day, Microsoft set the original benchmark with the original release rhythm, which was every 2 years.
Yep.
That was their release rhythm. Going back to 90 something. That was their release rhythm. It was every 2 years.
Honestly, I've got to applaud them on that for having waited 4 years until putting out the next one. And I'm hoping that they stick with that trend, because it seems to me like 4 years is enough time to actually add a bunch of stuff.
$150. I think it was 120. Let's call it $150 for, you know what? Even
Premium
easier.
Deluxe.
Even easier maths. Call it $160. Let's call it $160 for the base sim. No, it absolutely was cheaper than that, but for ease of math, let's go $160. That's $40 a year.
Yeah.
We've definitely got our money's worth. How many sim updates have we had? 15. How many world updates have we had? Was it 15 as well? Or 16? I don't even remember.
Something like that. Yeah, plus city updates, plus,
You're talking about stuff that comes out either every month or every other month, plus the city updates, plus the
40th anniversary
famous
pack.
flyers.
Famous flyers, yep.
The local legends, I don't know if we really want to count like the promotional packs like Top Gun or whatever, because those are like flash in the pan type thing.
Because there's still like the Top Gun pack came with an aircraft. The Hornet was already in the sim, so it's just a livery.
40, almost 50 updates that we've had in the last 4 years.
Yeah, we absolutely got our money's worth. So that's why I have absolutely no problem with them with buying spending that money again for another 4 years worth of it. So I just wanted to ask that question because I thought that was something to really think about moving into this new version of the sim. Prepared users kind of have seen it in the past with the change of base aircraft and whatever coming through. But I actually did want to. I did have one final point that I did want to ask you both about, because I have a pretty strong opinion on this one. The missions and careers mode.
I'll never use it. I'll tell you that.
I was going to say, what are your thoughts on it? What do you think the purpose is? Starting with you.
I understand why it's there, and I think it's a brilliant move from the standpoint of bringing in new people, because I am the guy that's always said the younger generation, we need to hook them, we need to bring them in. You see this? I'm getting older. We're all getting older.
That's why it's called
a lot of the community is getting. We need fresh blood, and if this is what's going to get them in, is to treat it like a game, we need to do that. give them the knowledge, give them concrete knowledge, not, press A to go up, but actually teach them some of the fundamentals of
Mhm.
flying an aircraft, develop that love early so that they actually get inspired. Hey, I could probably do this for real. I'm
Oh, they
okay
will
with it.
definitely do that for real.
I am
Or-
okay with it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sergio?
I'll never use it because, I'm old, I'm grumpy, I don't give a,
And you you
but for
also
the new
you also
kids
have
coming in, yeah.
but you've
Yeah.
also got I mean, you're an absolute innate storyteller. I mean, I love watching your stuff. You create stories, you create tales, whether it be in Skyrim, whether it be in Flight Simulator.
But it's even more than that. I've lived through this. I've told you about my experience with the virtual airlines.
Mhm.
For 2 years, it was literally my virtual job to mentor these kids that were logging into FS 2004 or FSX, whichever it is that their parents got them for Christmas.
Yep.
And watching these guys dutifully, clock into their 737s or whatever else that they were doing, flying their flights, doing their PIREPs, and so on and so forth. And then the best part now, 20 years later, watching these guys doing this stuff for real and posting on Facebook, how they're big shot airline pilots or they're in the military and stuff. So I'm telling you, this stuff works when you hook these kids into the flight sim bug from early and really get that into them, that whole dedication. At this point, it's not even about how realistic the flight model is. It's more about how realistic the experience is. You want them to leave that computer that day and say, wow, you know what? This is something I want to do the rest of my life, or as long as the good Lord will have me.
Sergio, he's sounding a bit like a drug dealer here.
and I'm the Don of the Mafia. Right. Right.
Sergio going to tell you the same thing except for helicopter. Watch. Go. It's all you.
No, I'm not interested in career mode, but I'm definitely interested in missions because yes, helicopters. Now, how I don't see any way of doing those jobs inside the sim. Firefighting, spraying, search and rescue. I think the only way they're going to do it is through missions. So yeah, I will go through the missions. I am excited about that because helicopters are not about transporting people from point A to point B. They are a lot more than that. And a lot of the missions well, not a lot, but a few of the missions that helicopters do are in the new version. So yeah, I think, well, Drew, it's kind of like flying in DCS. You have to have missions to make your aircraft make sense in DCS.
Mission makes the story.
Yeah.
Anybody who's flown in military civilian knows this.
I just hope, and this is something that I am going to try and find out with Jorg. I just hope they have a very good, very powerful mission editor, so that people can
Not
start
the shit
working.
show that they got at the moment, because I have worked with that. That is an absolute shit show.
I hope the mission editor is not something obscure like their development SDK. Mission editing should not be part of a developer SDK. It should not be considered development. It should be something easy and accessible to everyone using the sim, using the in-sim game for you to select, locations, place objects, etc., etc. It needs to be something easy for people to use. If it's, just wrapped inside a very obscure and weird SDK, I think it's going to be a very, very lost opportunity for Microsoft and a very, very lost opportunity for the community.
Guys, we've got about a little over a week until we get to Vegas. Can we at least make a pact here online, as the internet is our witness, that we will bring this up to them?
But not.
Yeah, I will.
And not only that, we want
for the greater good of the community. We need the entire community to have the ability to create mission.
I will for sure. I'm taking notes, guys. It's here in my paper.
Take notes
as we
take notes.
speak. Yeah.
So that's really interesting to hear from both of your opinions on that, because as I said, like for me, it's sort of a blend of that. For me, fundamentally, I think missions are the absolute biggest thing that was missing from the initial release. They attempted to address it, I think, a little bit with the 40th anniversary, with revisiting some of the classic missions out of FS9 and FSX.
Yeah.
I think it could have absolutely have been executed better. I think that the release with all of the world updates, how we would get a bush trip and a discovery flight that went with it, I think that was great. What concerned me was the lack of support that went with those. So the fact that basically none of those those bush trips would be broken 1 or 2 sim updates down the line, and they would never get fixed. Because I absolutely fundamentally believe that missions are essential to what you were saying, Drew, was kind of bringing people in. Because again, this version of Microsoft Flight Simulator, same as the one we're using right now, while we are the beneficiaries of it, we are absolutely not the target market. We are absolutely not. We will benefit from it, and
that one stings to hear.
I'm going to feel. I can feel the hate burning in the comments down below right now. While we benefit from it, absolutely, the fidelity of the systems, the improvements we talked about earlier of the flight modeling, the flight dynamics, and the scenery, and everything that we've seen improve in the last 4 years of the current sim, 5 years if you count from when we saw the pre-alpha, to what we're seeing that is about to be released in a few months' time. We are absolutely the beneficiaries of it, but fundamentally, we are not the target market. We are not. And this is going to be, because I saw it straight away. People were saying, why didn't Microsoft wait 2 weeks to announce it at Flight Sim Expo? Because we're not the market. We are a niche.
They will be at
Flight Sim
Expo.
Sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulties there, right there for one moment there. Anyway,
wouldn't be the 3 Grumpy Simmers without it.
It wouldn't be a Neverwing production without it. Yeah. So we are not the target market. Like, it is absolutely the greater, Xbox gaming community is the target market. Now, we benefit from it. You cannot tell me that we have not seen an improvement in the fidelity of the systems modeling, which a bunch of people complained about when the sim first launched. You can't tell me that there hasn't been improvements in the visuals. You can't tell me that there hasn't been improvement in the aerodynamics, the flight modeling. We benefit from all those things. So fundamentally, they want to make a great sim for everyone, and everyone extends beyond just us who've been doing this, who are dedicated to the hobby, who are dedicated to the community, who've been here a stupidly long time and are very grumpy because of it. We need to bring more people in. We need to entice a new generation to come and enjoy and experience the amazing world that we can create virtually inside of a simulator. So,
and that's one of the more important things, is the way that you entice people.
Give them
has
something to
changed
do.
From generation to generation.
Yeah.
What enticed us to get into flight simming might not exactly be the same as what's going to entice people that are coming.
We were used to making our own, and God, we sound old at this point, or at least I do. We made our own fun. Like, we went and figured out what we were going to do and where we were going to go. And, it's like, oh, I haven't been down this path before. I have got to go ride my bike, to the next, 2 streets over to the left instead of to the right this week.
We're the generation who stayed out until the street lights came on, and we had to get back home by then.
Yeah, or get a swift kick up the arse. Whereas and again, this is not saying this is good or bad. I'm not making a social commentary here. It's just simply the modern new generation of gamers. I have 2 sons. I can absolutely attest to this. They need something to do. They need something to, not
Purpose.
all the time, they need something to get them started. to sort of say, hey, this is what you can do. Because, and I pointed this out in my other video, and we talked about it earlier, the streamers who all started streaming, who streamed Microsoft Flight Simulator for the first 2 weeks, almost without a fail, especially the ones who dropped it after 2 weeks, it was they would jump in an airplane, usually the biggest one they could find. They would find their house and they would crash into it. And then they would go look at their viewers and say, now what? Or they, at the very least, or maybe they'd sort of say, oh, well, I'll go see if the Eiffel Tower's here, or I'll go see if the Washington Monument's been modeled, but then they fast ran out of things to do because there was nothing to guide them to say, hey, you can do medevac missions, or you can go rescue people off oil rigs, or you can go and be an airline pilot. You can fly commercial. There was none of that gentle nudge to say, here's what you could explore. And we had to rely on a third party to develop to do that. I mean, Sky Park Parallel 42, Sky Park by Parallel 42, I think is a great thing to give us random jobs to do things. So cool story. But again, that stuff wasn't out of the core sim, and that stuff is not available to our Xbox family. Because that's the other side of this we have to remember, is that the three of us are all on PC, and I'm sure many of the people watching are on PC. We have the benefit of having all these different avenues of getting stuff. Our Xbox family doesn't.
And I'm really curious as to what they can come up with. I want to see what stories they can tell doing the missions and everything, because that is the stuff that gives me the most immense joy, is seeing how much fun everybody's having.
Yep. So, yeah, that's it. All right. Closing thoughts for everybody. 30 seconds.
You already got mine. The only thing I will say is we are going to Flight Sim Expo. So if you don't mind, if you have any questions that you want to ask Microsoft and Asobo,
or any of the other devs,
them in the comments.
Yep. Or any of the other devs. Yeah. Put them in the
or
comments.
Any of the other devs. Yeah. Yep. Put them in the comments. Between Tristan and myself, Sergio, everybody, we'll check it out and we'll copy it down, put it on our phones, whatever. We'll ask them when we get a chance. And while we're there, we'll probably do a 3 Grumpy Simmers there.
Yeah, the world is not ready for that.
Vegas is not ready for that.
We tried to do one from Seattle, but we were on something NDA. We couldn't broadcast. We recorded it, but we couldn't broadcast.
Yeah, about that. Yeah,
Mr. Sergio.
Well, I'm excited. I think a lot of good things are coming to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Some of them are for me just irrelevant.
Something A330 GE engines.
Yeah. You guys, it's
want
just,
an A330.
It's just like with everyone, man. There's things that are exciting, things that aren't. I'm quite excited. York promised that I was going to be excited about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and I think he's right. I haven't seen everything that Microsoft planned.
Yep.
I haven't seen everything that Asobo has included in the sim. But I have to be honest with you.
I'll have my phone with me. I will take pictures. I will show the entire viewing audience if that man is excited by what Jorg has to say.
We'll have a live reaction cam, a Sergio reaction cam that will broadcast live.
I'll be honest with you. I would be happy if we had, even just firefighting. I would be happy with just that small step.
I got news for you. That stuff is confirmed, buddy.
Yes, Microsoft has gone even beyond. Now, are they going through the list that I gave them and adding more stuff in the future? I don't know, but just these first steps.
You heard it, folks. He has a list. He has a list.
Oh yeah, Jorg has it. Jorg has the list. Jorg has
told you
the
that.
list.
I really could have told you that. I remember the damn list when it started getting compiled. We were all there in the same freaking room.
Yep. So, okay. Well, that's good. So we're all, and for me, as I said, like I am really excited because I think that this is a great step forward, not only for the technology that makes the sim what it is, but also for for bringing it out to a new audience again and making it more accessible than ever before. Because that is the biggest thing that I've always been about, is making the flight simulation genre a more accessible genre and available and open and welcoming to more people. So I think that is great. All right, folks. So that is going to wrap up this extra long episode of the Three Grumpy Simmers once again. And a quick reminder, as Mr. Belgio said just before, we are going to be at Flight Sim Expo just in a couple of weeks' time. So make sure you keep an eye out for us if you are heading along. If you haven't got your tickets already and you are thinking of coming along, it would be a great time to do it. Link in the description down below. If you are unable to make it in person, never fear. There is a virtual component where all of the presentations are going to be broadcast live. You can pick up a virtual ticket to get some amazing goodies as well, and that is available from the link in the description down below. So make sure you check it out if you are able to. And with that, folks, that is going to wrap up the latest episode of the Three Grumpy Simmers. Thanks very much for joining me. Thank you very much to my fellow Grumpies. Thank you very much to the Don of the Helicopter Mafia.
He's like fast asleep already.
He's out.
It's late.
He's
We're
out.
both on
He's done.
Eastern time. He's just done.
My connection went down. You guys just froze. And I was like, what's happening here?
Done. You need to get some rest.
Get some rest on. So we're going to let the Don get some rest before he decides to put a Jesus nut in my bed. And I do want to say, once again, a huge shout out, a huge thank you to Mr. Belgio for providing his insightful comments once again. Don't forget, folks, to head over to helisimmer.com for all your latest news about not only helicopters, but also other things in the simulation world, as well as checking out his regular news video as well. And make sure you head over to Belgio's channel for some great adventures, both in the skies and on the high seas as well. So make sure you check them out. And seeing that you're here, maybe consider giving this video a like and maybe this channel a bit of a follow as well. So there you go. All right, folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care. Safe skies to all. Be amazing humans. And we will see you on the next grumpy episode of the Three Grumpy Simmers. See you next time. Bye for now.